time for another round of Brandy. Candid conversations over cocktails about all things brand with your hosts, Reilly Newman and Scott Saunders, the brand developers behind Motif Brands.
And welcome back to another round of Brandy.
Cheers.
Today's episode is in honor of the one and only Buffett.
Jimmy Buffett?
No. No, we're talking about Warren, good old Warren Buffett.
Oh.
The Oracle of Omaha. As many of you probably know from the news, Warren Buffett announced he's stepping down as CEO from Berkshire Hathaway. And some of you might be like, what is that? What is Berkshire? You know, you may have heard of Warren Buffett before. He's just a really awesome investor guy who, you know, he's 94 now and he's calling it.
And he's sitting on $130 billion
net worth.
Or something, net worth, just something crazy. And he's just now retiring.
He's now just, after he's been in the top 10 richest individuals in the world for a long time. He's always fluctuating in there, but he's always been up there. And, you know, just a really, really smart investor guy who did some great long-term investing. And that's kind of why we've decided to talk about him in regards to brand and overall just, you know, building your business, is that the mindset and the philosophy of Warren Buffett and what he brought to investing is actually very similar to how you should approach your brand.
Yeah. Not the idea of not being reactive, being proactive, planning for the future, and not short-term gain, but long-term gain. It requires you to weather storms that come through in the industry, just like in the financial market right now, right? There's people that have invested. And if you've got a balanced, more conservative portfolio approach to investing in IRAs or stocks or things like that, that you are, you know, you're not concerned about losing a bunch right now with the market dropping down. It will regain itself. It'll right itself because you've got your eyes on the far horizon. And so you're able to weather that with a little more peace of mind. And I think that's the idea with brand, is that you need to, you're required to invest in your business for short term. Obviously, you've got to keep your eyes on the short term thing with profit and loss and running the day-to-day business. But your brand, which is relational and constructed to engage with your audience, that has to be for a long-term investment. You have to be, the things you do now to pivot, you may not see immediate results for. You're going to see those long-term. It's that idea of that long-term investment, like Warren Buffett, not Jimmy Buffett, but Warren Buffett, preached from the mountaintops.
Right. And many people might be going, well, Scott, that sounds boring. I want hot, sexy business. I want to be a startup. I want to be a unicorn, right? And that's, to me, that's why I love Warren Buffett, is that he's the opposite of that. He is the Traeger of investing. He is low and slow.
The Traeger of investing.
But he just like
that label.
He does it so well, where it's like he focuses on fundamentals, no hype, and then he, in the long run, always wins.
Right.
And for an example, so he started Berkshire Hathaway in 1964, and now, in 2025 is retiring. And his overall gain, his return with Berkshire has been 5,500,000% return. And the S&P 500 in the stock market, that's one of the tickers you see on the news, that's been, in that same time window, that's been 39,000% return. So his roughly, 5.5 million% return.
That's crazy.
And so to put that in perspective, right, is that if you had $100, that $100 with Warren, when he first started, would be worth $550 million. And that $100 on the S&P 500 would be worth $3.9 million. So quite a big difference between $500 million versus, roughly $4 million.
And that's why, and I know Reilly, you're huge in investing and you invest a lot, and you're very financially minded. You read a slew of books on finance and all that stuff, and how it brings into, business strategy and all that component that you bring to Motif and everything else in your life. And I know you're a huge Buffett fan, and that's why my understanding is that he was an OG, and why him pulling out and kind of not being as active as he used to be is because he would help kind of set the roadmap. People would kind of, as things are happening in the stock market, they'd be, what's Buffett doing? What's Warren's approach right now and what's going on? And kind of use him as a barometer or a gauge or someone to go, okay, he's doing this, so let's model that because he's been such a consistent success over all the decades.
Yeah, and he's had some crazy success, and you're right, is that they would look at him and go, okay, why is he, like right now he's sitting on a bunch of cash. Berkshire Hathaway is sitting on a huge pile of cash, like abnormal amount. I think it's like 300 billion or something like that. It's just like this crazy amount. And so a lot of the for years now, it's been going, okay, what is he doing? Why is he showing up so much cash? And people haven't figured that out, what his plans are. But
his plans are to be frozen and then be defrosted in about,
and use the money.
Yeah, in about 100, 200 years from now, when his 130 billion net worth could actually be used to then, prolong his life, change his life, the fountain of youth, all that stuff. So he's
and I think what I've always liked, because whatever. So he was taught by a guy named Benjamin Graham. Benjamin Graham wrote this Bible in the investing world called The Intelligent Investor. And it's all about long-term investing. It's all about buy brands that you love and that you know and that you use every day and hold it for decades and decades and let the compound interest really take place and just hold on and let your money build over time. And that's versus what you see on Wall Street or like Wolf of Wall Street. That's like, okay, trading, you buy, low, sell it high and go fast. And there's these fast turnarounds. Right. And to me, that's just that's not investing. That's trading. That's like day trading versus investing. And like you should view your business and your brand is that they are investments. They are long-term. That's the only way you're going to let compound interest of your business start to compound. And what I would argue is that with brand, you have that same effect of compounding. Is that a brand that has more time on its horizon is going to have more exposure, more awareness, more opportunity versus going, no, my business needs to blow up overnight and then and then it's going to fade. Which even that, there's a theory that the businesses that you do see out in the market that blow up is that they can die 2 times as fast. Is that as fast as they grow and become unicorns overnight from Silicon Valley, they can actually die 2 times as fast. So getting back to Buffett is that, he's 94, he's retiring, he's still going to be on chair for Berkshire Hathaway. So he'll still be calling shots, a lot of it, but he's just a really brilliant mind who focuses on that long term. And what I love about it is that, like we've said before in past episodes, is that brand is that long-term thinking. It is thinking about the relationship. It is thinking beyond just the business transaction and really trying to play chess rather than just, stuck playing the immediate game of checkers.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's where the approach of your brand is that you're setting it up to weather some of the storms that you might have. I mean, right now, in a lot of industries, they're struggling right now in the economy. And even in going into this year, we're seeing a lot of people being reactionary to the economic uncertainty of our country and where we're at, and we may end up starting to see, in the fear of tariffs, we may see the explosion of buying up all the toilet paper again from all the stores like we did in COVID. But people are being reactionary now out of fear, right? Yep. And so many small businesses and brands we see be reactionary out of fear, and that's the opposite of what Warren preached from a financial investment side of things. And that's why it's so important to try not to be reactionary to things that are going on and ignore all that white noise and the fear and persevere and press forward with your brand and turn your business.
Yeah, and that same mindset, that's what in these moments in the market, which we had like a 20% dip in the market from all-time highs of the stock market. And so in those moments, this is like Warren Buffett when he would buy up a lot of stuff. So he would usually save up for moments like this. And then all the businesses and brands that were built improperly and weren't healthy, that's when they get really destroyed in these times. When you do have a slight deviation, then you have Warren going and he'll buy up and gobble up some of these really, really good deals.
You brought up a good point of the brands were built improperly. So what top of your head, like what is an improperly built brand? Like what are the table legs, the unstable table legs that people are building their brand on, right? That might be that case.
Well, in Warren's world, it was always like debt. Is that he's always been against, you don't build on like tons of debt, and a lot of these companies now are, due to Silicon Valley and startup mindset, are like, okay, get a ton of debt or a ton of investors.
Yeah.
And then when you do have investors, when you do have debt, you're accounted to someone else. So then you're having to report, you're having to do these things. Or even when companies go public, they're then forced to do quarterly reports. Yeah. And that's a very short-term mindset. And there's a lot of arguments against that now, where you can't just be reporting quarterly and then investors are asking for bigger and bigger returns every
because
single
they're wanting
quarter.
short-term investors, and that we've seen that a lot with. I mean, I remember some of some of our past clients where we've developed brands and stuff, but they were based on that person having a great idea, business model, whatever, wanting to get started and starting a business and launch a new brand, and they are working with investors. And so a lot of times we would, on the front end, in order to gain investment, you'd build a visual brand so that it looks better in a presentation deck to then get investors to get on board and help fund your business. The downside was that you were leashing yourselves to people that have a short-term gain mindset. And so we, especially I remember, with just after COVID, a lot of some of our smaller, startup clients have fell off. That they fizzled up and died because a lot of the investors pulled out. They lost faith in that or whatever. And so, and I know that people, if you are a small business or start looking at getting into building a start business, we understand it's funding, right? You've got to get a business loan. You've got to do things. So we understand that, but I think the mindset is that if you're in that position of building a brand, be mindful of latching on or leashing your business and brand to a bunch of seed money coming from outside investors. Yeah. What's their gain? They're looking at it for a profit loss. Then you are kind of setting yourself up for possible failure.
Yeah, and mind you, like Warren. He eats his own dog food too. Like he actually.
Wait, what?
I've never heard that term. So you preach something and he actually lives it, right? He talks the talk.
He eats his own dog food.
And he still lives in the original house he bought with his wife in Omaha, Nebraska, and like they drive their little sedan around. And it's like he lives a very simple life. I think his
he's not flashy.
His salary has stayed moderate. He's not like these CEOs that are getting $250 million per year and like insane amounts. He's stayed very modest and still one of the richest people in the world. And he's was the CEO of a $800 billion company. And he lived on like a normal life.
Drove a regular sedan like a lot of us.
And it goes back to why Berkshire was so healthy in the first place, is that from day one, he was all long-term focus, where he built this, or he acquired the company that was suffering for good money, turned it really into an insurance company so that they could take in premiums.
And what did they start off as? What did they start off selling?
It was a textile.
Textiles.
So it was not doing
like
well.
Floundering,
he was able to get in. I think there's in one book I read, he had there's some connections where he was able to get in, help it out, and then he ended up buying it, and then really got his foot in on insurance. And this is the brilliant thing about it, is that as a technical insurance company, they were taking premiums in from customers, and they would buy up more insurance companies like Geico or whatever. And so all that cash flow is coming in, and that cash flow is only paid out when there's a claim, which that's the whole casino of having insurance companies, that you're betting on, okay, the claims.
People not getting in an accident or not needing the insurance. Yeah.
And so with all that cash coming in, he's able to now invest that out, buy companies. That's when he bought See's Candy back in the day, and he bought, shares in Coke, and a bunch of other really staple brands. And then he's able to avoid a lot of taxation, but also that those companies grow, and his cash is then, he's not in debt at all. That cash is owned by him, essentially. He's not taking on investors, so he's not accountable to anyone. And it allowed him what a lot of investment firms can't do, is that he was able to invest in private companies, which private companies can be like In-N-Out is private. They don't have to do quarterly reports to shareholders and things like that, because they don't have to be under that pressure. And that all aligns with Buffett's philosophy of long-term investment, is that you don't have these companies that are, okay, in this quarter we have to make all these knee-jerk reactions to try to get our numbers up, right? Mm-hmm. And all this fake kind of parading. And so, with that said, it's like, okay, yes, brand is long-term focus, But that same mentality needs to be applied to your business and how you actually go about conducting yourself. And I think that's just some of the power that he brought to the table, and what his, really his vision for Berkshire and just the overall stock market is, that he was just, again, low and slow, and it just proved out over time where, again, the return speaks for itself.
Yeah. And I love to think about too, like when we're talking about like compound interest, and when it applies to brand, is it's like the snowball, and as a lot of times businesses are starting out, they have a brand, they're trying to gain traction with the in the market and with their desired audience, to build that brand, build that relationship with the audience. And that idea that once it starts moving forward, that compounding effect, right? As you're reaching more and more people, word of mouth grows, trust in the brand develops. And that's when the brand can really start to kind of break through that ceiling that new brands have, right? To then break through and start to really gain some traction. And depending on how you are managing your brand, it can either continue to excel into the next stratosphere, or it can flounder and start to wither and die. And that depends on how you are, how you're effectively managing and building your brand. And most of our podcast episodes are on various subjects about this and how to go about doing it. But the effect is similar to how, in a financial investment, like Warren, preached.
Yeah. And he would always talk about, okay, you have obviously long-term investing. He would always be like, just, whatever brands you interact with during the day, during your daily life, buy those. Like, them, you're familiar with them, and you get them. Don't go off into markets you don't understand and be, plain investor in doing that, but do things that So he bought like Duracell. He bought like some of these really classic Dairy Queen, these really classic brands. And even one of his biggest things that he didn't get in on was when Apple was really blowing up. Steve Jobs approached him, please, invest.
Yeah.
Because it really is like, if you got Warren Buffett's like blessing, that means you were like a sound company. You weren't a flight risk, right?
Yeah.
And he turned it down. And then it was probably 2016 maybe, when Buffett finally, he got in on Apple. And it still outperformed. Like it still was. He didn't get in when it was right away. When it was hot. When it was a hot thing on the market.
Not like Forrest Gump. He invested in a little fruit company, and it turned out it was Apple.
And so it was like everything about it was so deliberate. And that's what he would always look at with companies, was he would talk about them having moats. And I always think of like brands, and that's what he would, a moat would be, again, protection about the business and its market, and going, can someone interfere with it? Can someone steal the market from them? And he would look at really like positioning. He would look at how distinct it is. Some of these very intangible aspects of the business, because he's already, filtered through the fundamentals of the business, making sure that it's cash flowing and making, true business.
Yeah.
But then he'd look at the moat and go, okay, what makes this thing special?
Mm-hmm.
And really, like that spoke to me a lot, because it was like, okay, that there is something there. There is something that you can't really, create it into numbers, but there was something there that he'd look at with these companies, going like, okay, no, there's something special about them.
I think that's what makes it so interesting with when you talk about long-term investment and branding, is that, again, if you frame everything that we talk about with brand as a relationship, right?
Yeah.
And the business it's the business's relationship to the audience. But if you personalize it, is one person to another, and building a relationship that involves trust, it involves consistency, it involves long-term traction. I mean, you look at friendships or relationships you've had for a number of years, right? The longer you have a relationship with someone, a friendship, right, that has proven the test of time, and it always is continually deepening, because you have that long-term relationship with that. And that's why you look at brands that you maybe or we have continued to engage with over the long haul. That's why we're able to, even with little hiccups in let's say we talk about brand trust, right? If there's if a brand trips over itself or a business and unfortunately puts out a faulty product, or they had a misfire on customer service with someone, and people are like, oh, I hate this brand, blah 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 blah, right? Well, they're able to recover and pivot, because even though that might have been a little bit of bad press or a little bit of hiccup for the brand, it's that long-term relationship that the brand had with the audience that allows it to kind of survive that little speed bump that the business might have in its daily transactional functions. The brand is that relationship that, because the brand has been built and developed for that long-term success, that's what allows it to, like we talk about, seeing a dot on the horizon and steering the ship for that, allows it to have to navigate some tricky waters, maybe what appears to be off course, but it's still then rewriting and recorrecting itself, because it's not just looking at the point in front of it, right? Because if all it did, if as soon as rocky waves go, that boat's going around in a circle, it's way off course from where it wanted to be, because it's got that long-term, far horizon focus or optic.
Right. Yeah. And so if you're going, okay, I want to be long-term thinking. So what's the power of long-term thinking? Is that it puts time on your side, versus the other mindset is going, oh no, I need to go fast. We need to build fast. I need to scale. Yeah. I need to get investors. I need to blow up. Right. You're afraid of time in that mindset. The time is scarce, versus going, no, time's on my side. Now, what are some of the factors that come into play when time is on your side? And that's like compounding and being able to be consistent. Consistency is only valuable when it is over a longer period of time.
You can't be consistent in one day.
Yeah, it's like,
you can be consistent in 1 year, right?
And it's like, and I think, like, to your point, if a company does mess up, if they're able to be consistent over a longer period of time, the person will go, okay, yeah, that is a
fluke.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Okay, and they made it up to me. Or it's just it's over the period of time. Once you expand that over longer time horizon, it compounds and becomes more valuable. Yeah. And again, like even what Warren Buffett did with these, where it was like the compounding of this thing. If you go to whatever, Yahoo Finance or something, and look up Berkshire Hathaway, you'll see this line just going up to the right. And it's nothing ever this huge peak and then, drops down. It just slowly keeps climbing. And it's the most like beautiful thing, because it's just like, it's just compounding value. It's like climbing a mountain.
I love how finances just float your boat, dude.
And it
just gets so enamored with it.
It's like looking at the Mona Lisa, but a little more simple. But the and you look at it even versus all the trends, like in 2020, there was, they were starting to knock Warren. Oh, he didn't do anything. He wasn't buying Tesla or buying all these, Zoom and all these hot stocks.
He missed the boat.
He missed out on GameStop. And they're like, what an idiot. His investing, philosophy doesn't work anymore. And they're saying all this stuff like he's this old, grump. And then you look at those now, is that they've all tanked and flatlined, and his just keeps climbing because the long term plays out. And that's what it's like.
He's got the last laugh.
Yeah. And it's like you focus on the fundamentals. So let's apply, this $1 billion strategy to now your small business and go, if your fundamentals of your business make sense, you're not built on a ton of debt, you're doing things, you're providing value, your fundamentals are actually in
good working order.
You're healthy as a business. Then the brand is that long term where you're being able to build that and keep doing that and expanding your time horizon. Because you're not gonna build something over 2 or 3 years that's gonna blow up. It's like, no, you need to be thinking in decades. Yeah. And that's what he really what he did so beautifully, is that it was decade thinking of going, no, things aren't built overnight. Like it really is.
And if this is maybe one of your first few times listening to us on the topic of branding, one of the things we talk about is that brand needs to brand exists whether you like it or not. So a lot of times, if you're starting off with a new business, going, okay, great, Reilly, thank you, I'll get the business functioning in a healthy order financially, right? Get out of this. If I took a business loan, I'll work to get out of that, and then all this stuff, and then get to a healthy place, and then I'm going to start working on my brand. And we if you've heard us before, we'll say it again. Whether you like it or not, you have a brand. Yeah. Even a brand new business that's just about to open, right? We have one in our town right now that's been under construction. A new business is going to be starting up, and they got the logo coming soon, all that stuff, and it's already signaling to the audience what to expect, what it's about, and everything else. So even if you are on a shoestring budget and taking out a business loan and starting your own business, you also are starting off with a brand. And that's why your brand should not be something that is a phase 2 of your business. It needs to be as crucial in a phase 1 as securing that loan, securing that retail bricks and mortar, securing that website, whatever it is, right? Before you figuratively open your doors, you need to have your brand tightened down and already, ready to go too. That's just, it's paramount. It is, because it's even harder to wait a couple of years for as a small business and then go, okay, now I'm ready to rebrand and really kind of do this right. Yeah. Because now you're having to undo the impression that the market or audience has of your business up until this point.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me when people try to time the market, when they're like, oh, I haven't put money into the stock market because it's too expensive right now. It's not the right price, or it's too much. When they've done plenty of studies that you can't time the market, because even if you did have all the programs to time the market, you would still miss out. There'd be gaps where you would miss out. And so timing the market, this really ideal, this fallacy that people think that, I can buy it when it's low and then I'll sell when it's high, is very rare. You can't do that. And it's the same thing with this, where it's like, oh no, I'll push the brand off to phase 2. It's like, okay, now you're setting some undetermined milestone in the future, where then you're going to invest in helping build the perception of the business that maybe you had open for a year or two. And how do you know if you wouldn't have opened with your best foot forward, you would have had a better trajectory right off the bat, and you would have been, again, you would have started investing, and that money that you're putting into it would actually start compounding for you. And the same thing really does happen with like investing, where you have opportunity cost. So every decision, even not making a decision, staying in the same status quo, or not doing the branding, or not investing in brand, or not making that investment in the stock market, you're missing out on something. So that is a decision, and there is opportunity cost to that, where you are missing out on exposure to the market. Or in this case, it'd be your business missing out on the exposure of brand and allowing that to start compounding. It's like the old adage of, the best time to plant a tree was yesterday. The second best time is today. So when you are thinking about your brand and your business, getting started with the business is one thing. It takes a lot of guts. It takes a lot of grit to get that going. But also the brand needs to be there so this thing can start compounding and making all your efforts and all your performance and your investment at that point worth it. So going back to being consistent and going back to being long-term thinking, it's like you want to expand that time horizon that increases your exposure, that increases your opportunity. And one of my favorite adages that I kind of live by is, a constant dripping hollows a stone. I think it's an old Chinese proverb, but it's like it's about that even the hardest rock that can be controlled and drilled a hole through just through a constant dripping of water. It will slowly over time, but the consistency of that drip will make that hole eventually. And the same thing with your business. It's like, if you have that time horizon, if you give yourself enough time, if you use time to your advantage and you're consistent, and you're applying that pressure, you're applying that consistent kind of grit to it, it's like, that's what's going to pay off. The same thing goes for brand. It's like, that's what Warren shows us with his performance in his portfolio. And that's what some of these great brands show us, is that consistency over time always prevails. Yeah.
And a lot of it comes to, and we mentioned this the last couple, I think, previous podcasts or two, where just that idea that, as a small business owner, you're wearing every single hat possible. You may know nothing about web, but you're your own webmaster, and updating your website. You may know nothing about graphics, but you maybe are designing your own business cards or your own ads or whatever it is, right? You're doing all these other things that are maybe outside your main wheelhouse of skills. And that's understandable, right? But you need to lean on people around you, or reach out to people that aren't around you, to help you in this endeavor. Just like I don't know much about finance investment. I'm just not a numbers guy. I'm an artist. But if I'm going to be getting an investment or opening up and trying to create a balanced portfolio with some IRAs or Roth IRAs, I'm going to reach out to someone that actually knows more about it than I do. I'm going to lean on experts around me to give me the sound advice that I need to do it, because I don't know what I don't know. I'm not, I know things I'm good at and what I'm knowledgeable at, and things that I'm not. And so I think that's just sound advice for the small business owner when it comes to their brand.
Yeah. And it almost flies directly in the face of like Buffett's, his whole moat kind of ideology of like, no, it's not, you can't build a moat if you're not distinct. And by taking these shortcuts or, doing AI or whatever.
Following the herd, doing what everyone else is doing.
Yeah, it's like you're not going to be distinct. So then average doesn't compound over time. Average just leads to average. That's the point of average. Like average stays in the middle. And so it's only going to stay there over time. And versus distinction compounds over time. It's being able to be consistent, because being consistent with average just leads to average. Being consistent with distinct leads to further distinction. And it's like, that is the power of it, and be able to really lean into that and lean into your strengths. It's like, and that's why you don't do things you don't know. And that's, again, going back to another Buffettism, is that he stayed in his lane. He stayed within kind of some of the boring sectors that he understood, or some of the just iconic brands. And he wasn't going out and trying to go buy NVIDIA or whatever. He just stayed with it. And overall, I think from a business perspective, it's a great perspective to have. And it should almost encourage you too, is that sure, it may look boring and not sexy, and it looks very slow, but that's the same way like oak trees grow too. It's like that's the best kind of growth, is the slow, healthy growth. And the same goes for your business, and be able to go, okay, if that's the way I'm approaching my business, the brand needs to reflect that too. I need to look at it as I'm investing over the long term, and that's going to help with consistency and just the compounding of it.
Yeah, and we've talked about, with investing in your brand, a lot of times going the extra mile to bring added value to what you're offering as a business. The shrewd, money-pinching Scrooge business owner is going to look and going, I'm not going to do that unless I'm going to charge them for it. Right? It could be, you see it with restaurants, you see it with little, boutiques, you see it's time and time again. It's kind of like going in and going, it's like the local donut shop. You go down there and they're going to charge you $1.50 just to use your credit card. And like, I understand you're getting charged fees, but don't pass that on to the customer, because that's not added value. And yes, you may go, well, but then that eats my profit. Yes, but be cautious of the relationship you have with your customer, and that when you give them free stuff, and I'm not just saying stuff, but I mean added value to whatever it is, right? When you go the extra mile for the customer in whatever business, service, or product you're selling, those investments, yes, they might equate to financial, loss, but that's temporary, considering the long-term gain you're going to get with your brand.
Yep. No, it's like, just zoom out. Even right now, if you look at your portfolio, it's down 15%. Zoom out just 12 months and look at the window.
Yeah.
It's like, just change the perspective and change your lens, and you'll already start winning, because your mindset will change. You're going to go, no, this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity to invest. While all these other businesses are starting to retract and get scared, it's like, no, now it's land grab season. And that's what we saw in 2020. And I've told a lot of people that, where it's like, in 2020, I saw the true entrepreneurs come up, where they rolled up their sleeves and went, no, this is a chance this is our chance to rebrand. This is our chance to now get a bigger, stronger foothold in the market, and not just view it as, I need to stay alive, which stay alive as a business. But if you're looking on the long term, these little bumps along the way are going to happen. And sometimes they do provide, opportunity.
Yeah.
So overall, as you may know from our book or our podcast, we do think that brand is equivalent to long-term thinking. It's built right in. You have to. When you are thinking about brand, you are thinking about long-term. Think about the relationship. And Warren Buffett is proof in the pudding that long-term thinking, long-term investing is fruitful. So you could conclude that brand is very fruitful, is that you are forcing yourself, you're forcing your business to think long-term, to focus on the relationship, to focus on providing that value. and really reframe things that way. And don't worry, this doesn't mean you need to be the oracle of Omaha to actually think long term and do this, but you can apply these things to your business. But thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate you guys checking in.
Till next time, cheers.